Hello friends. Today in this video I am going to be telling the story of the 2016 mystery thriller series The Five. The Five is a Harlan Coben original story, and if you have seen other videos on my channel, you know that I love covering Harlan Coben stories because you never know where they're going to go. And The Five is just another example of that. But with that all said, let's get it started. Episode 1. Jesse Wells' Disappearance. The story begins out in the woods where we see a 5-year-old Jesse Wells hanging out with his older brother, Mark, and his friends. After a while, they tell him to head home because it is big kid time, and he heads in the opposite direction. Mark watches as he leaves. The story then jumps 20 years later where an old Mark Wells is now jogging through the same woods. His crew that he used to hang around with back in the day have since separated, and while they remain in touch for the most part, they don't hang out anymore. Danny is a detective in town, and he heads into work. When he gets there, he is told by his partner, Ally, they have a murder scene to investigate. A woman was killed by a man in a hotel room, and he cleaned up after himself pretty well. There was a little bit of DNA found at the crime scene though, and when Danny gets the results back, he is flabbergasted. Then jump over to a bar where Mark is celebrating his birthday and one of his old friends, Slade, shows up to celebrate with him. His mom speaks at the party, in which we already guessed, but she explains that she misses Jesse very much, and he went missing that day in the woods 20 years ago. A little later, Danny shows up and he has something to tell Mark and Slade. He says the DNA found at the crime scene matches Jesse's DNA. Mark is shocked to learn his brother is alive. The following day, Danny speaks with his father and asks him if he remembers anything about Jesse, but he doesn't answer. We also find out that a man named Jacob Morosi is in prison because he confessed to killing Jesse a long time ago, and that's why his family thought he was dead. Slade gets a hold of Prue Carew, who was the girl in their posse 20 years ago. That's why it's called The Five. There are 5 in the friend group who were the last to see Jesse. Mark tells Danny he wants to talk to Jacob in person at the prison. Jacob continues to say he did it, and he also killed 4 other boys as well and buried them. When Mark gets back home, he tells his parents he thinks Jesse is alive. His father doesn't believe it, but his mother is ecstatic. That night, Slade finds a young girl in the dark streets, and when Danny looks her up, she has been missing for many years. She says she was held captive against her will, and there are others. Danny then receives a call they have a lead on the suspect, and when they catch him, Danny asks the man if he is Jesse, but the man just laughs at him. The next day, Slade meets with someone mysterious and then has a flashback of him chasing Jesse through the woods. Back in present day, he shoots a man dead. Episode 2. Is he our guy? This one starts off with a bang, and we see a music producer, Jay Newman, has 4 girls locked away in a hidden room behind his recording studio in his house. Then we jump over to the police station where Danny is about to question the boy they caught in the previous episode and find out if he is Jesse or not. Danny asks the boy if he is Jesse, and the boy has no idea who that is. He does tell Danny that he's not a murderer and just got freaked out by cops chasing him. The girl that Slade found in the last episode's name is Gemma, and she actually escaped Jay's captive room from his house, but doesn't remember exactly where it is. Mark and Alan come to see if the suspect is Jesse, and Alan immediately says it's not him. Slade and Mark continue to find out about the murder victim since she probably knew Jesse with his DNA being at the crime scene and all. Apparently, she was an escort. Prue starts hanging out with Slade a little bit, and apparently she was with Mark when they were teens, but she would cheat on Mark with Slade. Jesse caught them one time, and they freaked out thinking he would tell Mark. The following day, a girl named Brittany tells Slade that she helped Jay kidnap the girls because she was under his spell and Gemma was one of them. Meanwhile, Gemma is telling the police everything she remembers about Jay's house and the yard. There was an upside-down umbrella near the house. Danny and Ally are driving around one day, and they think they see the house Gemma was describing, but the gate is locked. Jay then pops out and willingly lets them come inside. The dungeon room is completely soundproofed. They don't find or hear anything and leave. Danny does find Jay suspicious though and considers bringing a warrant back. Episode 3. A shocking discovery. To kick this one off, we see how Jay lures the girls into his car by promising fancy items and then knocks her out and kidnaps her with the help of Brittany. In present day, Brittany drives around with Slade in hopes of finding the house where he takes the girls, not knowing Danny just visited the house. Danny and Ally get another lead for their case, and they raid a man's house named Joe Hanley, and the dude acts completely sketchy. Joe actually slept with Alexa Calloway as an escort, and she was the murder victim. He says he would never kill anyone though. They leave his house, and in the car, they get a call about a man found dead in his home, and it is Jay Newman. Danny eventually finds the dungeon and saves the young girls. Brittany still feels guilty for helping Jay, but Slade comforts her and says she was a prisoner too. Ally and Danny then go search another suspicious house, and while they're looking around, there is masked boy in there with a laptop hiding from them. A chase happens and a random dude knocks the boy out cold, and he is taken to a hospital to be treated. The doctor doesn't know when or if he will wake up. Julie and Alan arrive to see if they think it's Jesse or not. Julie says it's not him. Ally and Danny look at the boy's computer, and they find a list of names on it that includes Joe Hanley. Then the files somehow delete automatically. A little later, Ally gets DNA results back from Newman's body, and yes, Jesse's DNA was on him too. They think Jesse killed Newman, but it's not a match with the boy in the hospital. The boy wakes up and goes on the run. The episode closes with Prue telling Mark the truth about the day Jesse disappeared and how they chased him off in the other direction after he found her and Slade making out. They didn't tell this to the police because they thought they would look guilty even though they didn't do anything to Jesse. So the police were always looking in the wrong direction. Episode 4. Dark Secrets. Mark chats with Danny and tells him the information he just learned from Prue and how so many people weren't questioned that should have been. Danny promises to look into it, but Mark must let him do his job as he is the detective here. Mark then goes to meet with Slade and confronts him about lying to him all these years and how they chased Jesse off in a completely different direction. Slade apologizes. Danny and Ally chat with the abducted girls and they say how Newman had help from another girl to kidnap them, but they don't know her name even though we know it's Brittany. They don't. Danny is still trying to figure out how Jesse connects to all of it and why his DNA was on Newman's shirt. Danny is going to check his father's old case files as he was the detective on the Jesse case 20 years ago, and he's going to make sure it was done properly. When he looks at them, it's all blank. The police find a skeleton buried in Newman's yard. Mark and Prue continue to work together to try and find more information on Alexa because he knows Danny and her were involved in something together. Mark notices someone following him though. Brittany prepares to confess to the police about her role in Newman's abductions. Mark gets in a wreck and then a man gets out and beats him. A stranger then arrives and beats this dude down. It's mayhem. At the police station, Brittany arrives, but one of the girls tells her not to turn herself in and basically how it wasn't her fault. Newman pretty much forced her to do everything she did. Mark got the plate number from the car that attacked him, so he and Slade go to the address on file. They get to a building and go in to look for him, but Slade makes a call and it is to this mystery man inside. A few moments later, Slade then tells Mark the man vanished somehow. That night, Danny asks his dad why the Jesse case files are blank, but gets no answers. The episode ends with Izzy, one of the abducted girls, finding Brittany and stabbing her several times. Episode 5. Mark's investigation. Slade finds Brittany covered in blood, and he carries her to the emergency room in hopes of saving her life. Prue's fiancé finds out that Prue has been hooking up with Mark behind his back, and he tells her to stop the affair at once. Danny takes his dad out to the woods in hopes of jogging his memory about Jesse and his case. At the hospital, Slade is heartbroken to learn that Brittany died from her injuries. The police see that Izzy was the murderer and Izzy is arrested. Slade blames himself. Later on that day, Prue's fiancé Stuart shows up at Mark's workplace and tells him to leave his future wife alone. Mark tells him she's a grown woman, and he tells him to leave. He then goes to meet with Danny, and Danny tells him about finding Jesse's DNA at the Newman crime scene. Mark then goes searching around town for a girl named Selena. He doesn't know that there is a chick following him and taking his pictures at every stop. At the police station, one of the forensic analysts there, Carl, asks Ally on a date, but she says she doesn't date coworkers. Danny then walks in and says they need to go talk to Jacob Morosi because the timeline is now off and Morosi has been lying this whole time. They go talk to him and ask for a body to confirm he actually killed Jesse. They want to know where he is buried. Morosi takes honor in being a serial killer, but he says he doesn't have to do anything for them. Mark goes to a brothel where Alexa worked, and when he looks inside her room, there is blood everywhere. Meanwhile, Slade goes out to the woods and burns every picture of Brittany that he had, and then weirdly walks into a pond. Ally meets Carl for drinks at a bar. The episode closes with Morosi telling the camera every kill has 3 acts. Episode 6. Act 1. This one starts off with Ally waking up next to Carl, so guess she did give her coworker a chance. Ally wants to keep it a secret from the other colleagues though. When they get to the office, Danny can definitely tell there is something going on between them. Meanwhile, Mark finds Alexa's daughter and asks her a few questions about her mother and if she ever mentioned anything about Jesse. She says the name doesn't ring a bell. She does give him a USB stick her mom left for her. On the tape is Alexa exposing a bunch of crimes that have been committed by those around her and telling her daughter who to look out for. She was actually attacked by a man not soon after, but she got away thanks to the help of Slade. Mark then calls Prue to come help talk to Jessica. Jessica goes outside to get some fresh air, and some woman is out there and tells Jessica to come with her. Mark and Slade then follow in a van. On the way there, Slade tells Mark he killed the man that attacked Jessica a few days ago, and that is who he shot earlier in the season. They follow the car to a rich estate, and Jessica goes inside to talk to a man. He was just after the USB stick she had because there was incriminating evidence against him on it. An epic action and chase scene then ensues once they realize Mark and Slade are there. Mark and Slade are able to take down the henchman and rescue Jessica. They return Jessica to her closest family. The episode ends with Mark telling Slade he thinks Jesse killed Newman since his DNA was found on Newman's shirt, but Slade says that's not true because he killed Newman. Episode 7. Relationship Test. Julie and Alan are sleeping at their house one night and hear an intruder break in. Alan breaks to catch the guy, but the man slips out the front door and scurries away. Julie thinks it was Jesse. Slade then tells Mark he killed Newman because he caught him torturing those poor innocent girls and felt Newman deserved death, and he thought Newman would come after Brittany. At Danny's house, we learn that the reason Danny's father swept Jesse's case under the rug was because he thought Danny was the one that killed him with a baseball bat because he had anger management problems as a kid. Danny says he loved Jesse and would never do that. Danny then receives a call from the forensics department, and they found the book Jesse disappeared with as a kid buried in Newman's yard where they found the skeleton earlier as well. Danny is so confused how his DNA is showing up everywhere in present day if he died all those years ago. Meanwhile, Mark tells Prue that he believes someone is following him in the woods every day, and he thinks it might be Jesse. Prue tells him to be careful because they don't know if he's dangerous or not. They then go out into the woods together, but someone is watching them. Mark chases the guy for quite a while, but the mysterious man runs into a building. Mark then calls Danny and says he believes he has Jesse trapped. The police team then search the building, but of course, no sign of anyone. Mark then has a pint with Slade, and he wonders how Jesse just disappeared into thin air, with only one way out of the building before the police got there. He's sure it was Jesse. The episode finishes with Danny receiving a message from Jacob Morosi, who says he has information for him. Episode 8. Rock Bottom. Danny and Ally go meet with Jacob Morosi, and he says he wants to show them where Jesse is buried. He wants to give the family closure. They are considering letting him out so he can lead them to the body. Slade is at the community center that day when the police show up and say they are arresting him on suspicion of murdering Jay Newman. Meanwhile, Danny lets Morosi take them to the body out in the dunes. Slade has Mark represent him as his lawyer. Mark lies to the police and says that he was with Slade at the time of the murder, so it couldn't have been Slade, giving him an alibi. They let Slade go. Out in the dunes, they do end up finding a body that appears to be of a child, and Danny is upset to see this, and he knows he has to break the news to Mark, Alan, and Julie. One of the forensic analysts then walks up to Danny and says it isn't Jesse's body because the bones are of a female. Morosi wasn't lying when he said he eliminated 4 young ones and buried them. Danny meets with Mark, and he wonders if this is all a hoax and someone just pretending to be Jesse and messing with them. Mark says no way. Ally and Danny follow a lead of Morosi's that takes them to this religious chick's house, and she worships Morosi and would always write with him in jail. Danny thinks she may be working with Morosi and playing a cruel trick on them. She scoffs at them and tells them to leave. Danny knows they don't have enough for a warrant either. Danny asks Slade if he will break in her house when she isn't home and look for the letters she wrote Morosi. When the chick is at church, he heads in and snaps photos of everything he finds. The 4 friends then scope through everything, and they find bills for a storage unit she kept for him, so of course they go check it out stealthily. They find a bunch of cassette tapes with children's names written on them, and Mark finds the Jesse Wells to end the episode. Episode 9. Family Ties. Danny watches the tapes, and he is disturbed by what is on them. Morosi filming kids at the park and kidnapping them. Ally joins him to watch Jesse's tape last, and he does film him for Act 1. But tapes for Act 2 and Act 3 are blank, unlike all the other kids. Morosi wanted to kill him, but didn't. They bring the tape into Morosi, and he watches it and says, "The one that got away," confirming he didn't kill Jesse. Morosi tells them he was about to kidnap him, but his father, Alan, interrupted, and that's the last he ever saw Jesse. They then go to Alan's diner and bring him in for questioning. At the station, he explains he would never hurt Jesse, and they release him. Danny tells Mark he finally believes Jesse is still alive. About an hour later, Danny receives a phone call from a forensic analyst that tells him Alan's DNA doesn't match Jesse's. Alan isn't Jesse's biological father. Danny and Mark go ask Julie who Jesse's father really is, and she says a man named Frank Lipton who she was having an affair with, and he left town about 2 years after Jesse's death. Danny and Mark then head to Frank's address on file and find an older man upstairs. Apparently, he's just a neighbor who sneaks into the house to get away from his wife. The owners haven't been there in years. Danny then gets an emergency call that his house is on fire because of his dad, so he has to hurry home. Meanwhile, at the station, Prue is helping Ally sift through CCTV footage because they believe Jesse may have donated blood recently. They find something and Ally says, "Oh my God." Slade goes with Mark, and they go to a new address they found where Frank Lipton may live now. Mark recognizes the man right away. The episode ends with Ally seeing Carl was the one who donated blood and is the real Jesse. She's been hooking up with him this whole time. Episode 10. Face the Truth. Series Finale. The finale opens up with Frank telling Mark and Slade how he and Julie started the affair all those years ago. She was there for him after his children died in a car accident. A flashback then shows Jesse catching Slade and Prue kissing, and they chased him away. He got to a fence where Frank saw him, and Frank followed him knowing Jesse was his child. In the woods, Morosi tries luring Jesse to come with him, but then Frank appears and says that is his son and to leave him alone. So it wasn't Alan who Morosi saw, it was Frank. Jesse then went with Frank when he told him he's his real dad. He then took him home, moved out of town, and raised him on his own without Julie's permission. Even changed his name to Carl and made him forget his past. The years passed, and recently, Carl went to a bar and a girl told him there was a dead body in a hotel room. He then went to check it out, but since he was the first on the scene, he got his DNA in the room before he called the murder in. And when Danny had him run the DNA samples the following day, the results came back for Jesse Wells, and after seeing himself as a child, he realized everything he had forgotten about his childhood. Mark is beyond upset hearing Frank tell him all of this. At the police station, Jason tells Ally all the truth about Carl just recently finding out he was Jesse Wells, and he's taking time to process everything. Mark tells Danny everything he's learned as well and how Jesse has been his coworker all this time. Everyone goes on a manhunt to find Jesse and make sure he doesn't do something he'll regret. A long montage then shows Carl was the one running and spying on everyone throughout the season. He didn't know how to tell his real family he was Jesse. It's also why the police could never catch him, but his DNA was always there. Mark knows where he is, and he goes out into the woods to talk to his brother. They share a heartwarming moment together after finally reuniting after 20 years. Everyone gets a happy ending. The season closes with the 5 hanging out together. And that is it for the 5. Any other series or TV shows I should do? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.